She was not a movie star. She was not a socialite. She had no publicist, no agent, no carefully curated public image. She was a quiet young woman from Seoul, South Korea, adopted into one of Hollywood's most complicated families. And she had absolutely no intention of becoming the most talked about woman in America. But in the winter of 1992, a single discovery turned her life inside out, ignited one of the most explosive scandals in Hollywood history, and placed her at the center of a love story that the world could not stop debating. Decades later, most people still have questions. Who is Soon-Yi Previn? Really? What happened to her after the cameras turned away? And where is she today? The answer is more surprising. To understand the story, you first have to understand the world that Woody Allen occupied in the late 20th century. By the 1980s, Woody Allen was not merely a successful filmmaker, he was an institution. His films Annie Hall, Manhattan, Hannah and Her Sisters had redefined American cinema. Critics placed him alongside Bergman and Fellini. He had won multiple Academy Awards. He wrote, directed, and starred in his own projects with a creative freedom that almost no other filmmaker in Hollywood history had been granted. He was New York City personified, intellectual, neurotic, witty, and relentlessly productive. His personal life, however, had always attracted a particular kind of attention. He was known for relationships with younger women, for a famously complicated inner world, and for a fiercely guarded private existence. When he began a long relationship with actress Mia Farrow in the early 1980s, the public largely accepted them as one of Hollywood's most creatively intertwined couples. They made 13 films together. They were photographed at premieres, celebrated at awards ceremonies, and widely regarded as a permanent fixture of New York's cultural elite. Nobody saw what was coming. Soon-Yi Previn was born in South Korea, likely around 1970, though her exact birth date was never officially recorded. She was found as a young child living on the streets of Seoul, malnourished and without family documentation. She was eventually adopted by Mia Farrow and her then husband, the celebrated conductor Andrei Previn. She grew up in a large blended household alongside numerous siblings, both biological and adopted, in a family that was itself unconventional by any standard. Soon-Yi was, by most accounts, a reserved and independent young woman. She attended college in New Seoul, York, studied hard, and kept a relatively low profile compared to the high-wattage world her mother moved in. Woody Allen had been a presence in her life since childhood, not as a stepfather. He and dating Mia Farrow never married and never lived together, but as her mother's long-term partner, the relationship between Allen and Soon-Yi, as Allen himself has described in various interviews, developed gradually and unexpectedly over several years. By 1991, when Soon-Yi was in her early 20s, they had developed what Allen described as a genuine romantic connection. It was not, he insisted, a relationship born of power or manipulation, but of mutual feeling between two adults. Whether the public would ever accept that framing was a different question entirely. In January 1992, Mia Farrow discovered nude photographs of Soon-Yi in Woody Allen's apartment. The story broke publicly within weeks and detonated across every form of media simultaneously. The headlines were merciless. The coverage was relentless. Late-night comedians made it their opening monologue. Tabloids ran it on the front page for months. The criticism came from every direction. Many people were deeply disturbed by the dynamic, not because anything illegal had occurred between two consenting adults, but because of the complex family relationship involved. Soon-Yi was the daughter of Allen's partner. She had grown up, at least peripherally, in his orbit. To many observers, the boundary crossed felt profound, regardless of legality. Others pointed to cultural dimensions of the story, questioning whether the narrative being told about Soon-Yi was entirely fair. She was rarely given a platform to speak for herself. She was frequently described in the press as naive or vulnerable, characterizations she would later reject with considerable force. Korean American communities expressed their own range of reactions, some feeling that Soon-Yi was being reduced to a caricature, rather than seen as a full human being with her own agency and perspective. Through most of it, Soon-Yi herself said almost nothing publicly. She was in many ways the central figure of a story that everyone seemed eager to tell without her. In December 1997, Woody Allen and Soon-Yi Previn were married in a private ceremony in Venice, Italy. She was approximately 27 years old. He was 62. It was, by most accounts, a deliberately quiet affair. No red carpet, no press release, no carefully staged photographs for the tabloids that had spent years dissecting their relationship. In the years that followed, they adopted two daughters together, Bishay and Manzi, both of whom were born in Texas and adopted as infants. By the early 2000s, the couple had quietly settled into what appeared to be a stable private family life. Soon, Yi took on a central role in raising their daughters, while Alan continued his relentless work schedule, directing a film almost every single year. People who expected the marriage to collapse quickly were, whether they liked it or not, proven wrong. The relationship that had been called doomed, exploitative, and impossible was, at least by outward appearances, enduring. Those who knew them personally began describing a dynamic that surprised outsiders. Soon Yi was not the passive figure the media had painted. She was, according to multiple accounts, direct, strong-willed, and very much the decision-maker in the household. The story did not remain stable. In 2018, as the broader cultural moment of the Me Too movement reshaped how the public evaluated allegations against powerful men, the accusations made by Woody Allen's adopted daughter Dylan Farrow, that Allen had sexually abused her as a child in 1992, returned to the center of public conversation with new intensity. Dylan Farrow had first made these allegations publicly in 2014 and had spoken about them for years prior. Allen has consistently and categorically denied them. No criminal charges were ever filed. Two separate investigations, one by the Connecticut State Police and one by the Yale New Haven Hospital Child Abuse Team, reached different conclusions in the early 1990s, and the case was never prosecuted. What changed in 2018 was the cultural weight placed on those allegations. Actors who had worked with Allen began publicly expressing regret. Amazon canceled a production deal. His memoir was dropped by its original publisher before being picked up by another. The conversation around his legacy became sharply and perhaps permanently divided. Through this period, Soon Yi did something she had rarely done before. She spoke. In a 2018 interview with New York Magazine, Soon Yi Previn gave her first major public statement in years. She was pointed, articulate, and unapologetic. She pushed back against what she called a false narrative built around her relationship with Allen. She described her childhood with Mia Farrow in terms that shocked many readers. She defended her husband directly and challenged the media's long-standing characterization of their relationship. It was, for many people, the first time they had heard her speak as herself. Today, Woody Allen and Soon Yi Previn remain married. Over 25 years after their Venice ceremony, they continue to divide their time between New York and Europe, where Allen has spent considerable time directing films in recent years following his complicated relationship with the American film industry. Soon Yi, now in her early 50s, lives largely outside the public eye. She does not maintain social media profiles. She gives interviews rarely and selectively. She is primarily known in her daily life, not as a celebrity or a public figure, but as a mother. Their daughters, Bashay and Manzi, are now adults. By most available accounts, family life has remained the center of her world. She has continued to speak in limited context about her own story, consistently on her own terms, and in her own voice. She has made clear that she does not see herself as a victim of her marriage, and she has rejected that framing with consistent firmness over the years. Whether one agrees with her perspective or not, her willingness to claim authorship over her own narrative is in its own way remarkable. She is not famous. She did not seek fame, and in a story that swallowed so many people whole, she has somehow remained, most essentially, herself. There is something worth sitting with here. Beyond the headlines and the legal debates and the decades of cultural argument, Soon Yi Previn entered one of the most powerful entertainment ecosystems in the world, not as a participant but as a subject, someone the media wrote about, debated over, and narrated for. And yet, over time, she has quietly, methodically refused to be defined entirely by anyone else's story. She built a family, she raised children, she stepped forward to speak when she chose to, and stepped back when she did not. Fame has a way of flattening people into symbols. This story, whatever you make of it morally or personally, is ultimately about a woman who was handed a symbol and chose to be a person instead. Whether that is enough, or whether the questions surrounding the larger controversy will ever truly be resolved, is something each viewer must weigh for themselves. But it does raise two questions worth considering. When we consume these kinds of stories, are we actually listening to the people at the center of them, or are we mostly listening to ourselves? And when someone tells their own story in a way that challenges everything we assumed, how willing are we to actually hear it? Leave your thoughts in the comments.